film to work, but hopefully it will.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to my channel, Positive Fandom, for our Glory Live Watch Party. And of course, we have with us today Darth Plato. Darth Plato, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for asking. I've been looking forward to this all week. It's one of my favorite movies. Civil War's not really my thing, but it's still it's really a magnificent piece of film, and whoever made this really does love the history.
Absolutely, Darth Plato. And of course, we also have Lance from the Outcast Creative. Lance, how are you tonight?
I've got a bit of hay fever and a slightly sunburnt face, so because I've been out working a lot this week, so I'm going to stay off camera for a change. You all know how gorgeous I look already, anyway. So, but yeah, to reiterate what Darth Plato said, you see, I didn't know that there was a black regiment in the American Civil War until I saw this movie. It probably was mentioned in the Ken Burns documentary, but I think I just probably forgot. I love the film. I worked at the cinema when it was on. I also recreated the Battle of Fort Wagner at a massive games convention, and I'm going to see if I can find the photos of that. And if I find them, I'll send them to you on WhatsApp.
That sounds great. And Darth Plato, you said you were at 40 seconds, right?
That's right.
Okay, so let me just see if I can get the counting clock to 40 so we can be on the same page here. And let's mute that to 40 seconds, guys. We're going to be starting at 40 seconds. There is a little information page that tells you about Glory. I think it's at maybe 10 seconds where they talk about some of the important, they give you a little bit of background about what's going on during this time period. So I'm going to stop the clock at 40 and then just wait till, I don't know, Lance, if you have your film queued up and ready.
Yeah, mine's, I've just started it now. I've got the TriStar horse galloping at me.
Wonderful. Okay. So I stopped it at 40. I stopped mine at 40. We'll just wait to, you let us know, Lance, when you are at 40 and we will start this.
Okay, I'm 15 seconds away. I've got the Robert Gould Shaw, son of a wealthy, that credit up on the beginning.
Yes.
So I am 3, 2, 1, 40 seconds in.
All right, let's do this. Start, everybody. It's fantastic film, Glory.
Such a good score by James Horner, which I own on vinyl, and I've just pulled apart my record collection trying to find it today, and it's missing.
Oh no.
Yeah.
And hello, OG fan. When Star Wars was just Star Wars says hello, everyone. One of my favorite movies, Colonel Shaw and Private Trip.
Yeah. So the opening shots of the Battle of Antietam, most of these shots were done by a second unit, and this is mainly from a Gettysburg reenactment that takes place not far from the actual Gettysburg war memorials, but that land is all protected, so the reenactors aren't allowed to reenact the battle there, but they do it, I think, about 10 miles away, so not that far, and that's what most of these shots are from at the beginning.
Thank you so much for that. I'm just trying to get you my Twitter information. I'm looking at it, but I don't know how to share it.
Yeah.
Antietam.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the Confederates call it the Battle of Sharpsburg. It's in Maryland. It's very close to Harrisburg, Virginia, which is where Lee was actually going. So it's actually not that far from Gettysburg in real life. Yes, that is true.
Fantastic.
So this should be just I believe it was in July 1862.
Yeah, Gettysburg hadn't happened yet.
No, not until the following year.
And this battle was kind of a stalemate, I seem to recall. There wasn't like a clear victor.
Yeah, tactically it was a draw, but it was a victory for the North because Lee was forced to retreat.
Right.
Okay, so I put my Twitter handle in the chat for you, Lance.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mikey Lito is here, guys. Hello,
hey.
Mikey Lito. says, howdy, folks. Just stopped by to drop a like. I'll catch it on the replay as I'm going out with my brother. Enjoy the movie. Well, I'm so glad you are going out, Mike Lito. Hope you are well. So good to hear from you. We also have Joe Tyson here tonight who says greetings. Well, greetings to you, Joe Tyson.
I'm just saying hello, everybody, and hello, Nicolito.
Hey.
Yeah, hi everybody. So the production design on this show, I mean, you can see from the opening shots, not just that really big shot there, that's from the reenactment battle, but even the main unit stuff, I mean, everything is historically so accurate. The attention to little details is really first rate in this film the whole way through. That's something I really love about it.
Unfortunately, I can't weigh in on that because Civil War is not really my thing. But
I mean,
I believe it, though.
I only know what I've learned from the documentaries and the making ofs and so on. But from what I'm not an expert of this period. I'm a fan of the period, but I'm not an expert like World War II. But certainly, it seems like everything is really spot on.
Okay, September. Okay. I did talk to Civil War buff when I watched Gods and Generals, and he does like to do a lot of those Civil War reenactment and stuff. And I get the sense that when people do stuff like this, who are into this sort of thing, they really care about the detail. So
Yeah,
I really believe that these people really are being careful in their detail.
Yeah, I mean, without the reenactors societies, these films would have been impossible to make in the first place.
Yes,
that's how they get the scale of these battles. And but I think the thing with Glory was it was the first American Civil War film that I saw that really depicted the violence in a real way. There's that shot coming up now, for God's sake, come on, and literally the next second the guy's head gets blown apart. Yeah, I mean, I remember everybody flinching in the cinema when that shot happened.
And the hospital scene after that, we'll see it.
Oh my God, yeah. I'll never forget that. The guy's having his leg sawn off. It was pretty horrendous.
An OG fan when Star Wars was just Star Wars says, oh yeah, Gettysburg is one of the most amazing places. When I was a traveling salesman, I went to Pennsylvania 7 to 10 times a year. So I've been to Gettysburg at least 50 times. The place has gravitas. As a reenactor, you have to attend a certain number of events like the battlefield recreations to keep your membership and ranks. It's taken very
I believe it.
Seriously.
Yeah. I mean, these are hardcore guys that, they really love this.
Now, Darth Plato, what made you choose this movie for this week's viewing?
Well, it occurs to me that we're getting close to June 19th, which is right about Juneteenth Day. And although I don't think that Juneteenth Day should be a national holiday, I certainly do think that it's something that people should know about and people should remember. And when I think about that, this movie always comes to mind because Juneteenth Day was the last state to really officially end slavery in actuality. And of course, Glory deals with the Massachusetts 54th, which was one of the first all-black regiments. I don't believe it was technically the first.
I think it was the first one that was deployed in operational combat. There was another unit that you actually get to meet in the film that had actually been started earlier, but they weren't trained properly. They were just used as sort of cannon fodder or to go and ransack towns and stuff like this. And it's pretty dodgy, actually. But you'll find out about that later in the movie. It's quite good that that's covered.
You're talking about the 2nd South Carolina?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. With Bob Gunton, I think, in command, and he's a fantastic actor. He's so good in that little role as the guy that's using them.
Colonel Montgomery, yeah, we'll get to that. There's Morgan Freeman there. That is not a good job. But the battlefield after a battle, that would have been a pretty terrible thing to witness.
Certainly.
Yeah, the stench would be the worst thing.
That and the fact and the people who would hang back, wait for the battle's over, so they could just rush in and just start looting the place.
Now, this is quite an unusual shot that really confused me at first. As the camera comes over the hill, you now see that the battle is still going on, but it's actually gone past him and gone the other way. And that's the South now in retreat. So when I watched this the first time, I was really, really confused. I was like, hang on, so what's happened here? It's all flipped around and gone the other way. But when I read about the battle, then I kind of understood. Yes, hospital scene, quite memorable for all the wrong reasons.
And here it comes.
Yeah, I mean, the production designers did not hold back on this. What do we think of the casting of Broderick in the lead role?
I think he did a good job. He is supposed to be playing somebody who's innocent, and he is clearly it. I think he did a good job. I think for what he's trying to do with his career, I was surprised that he would even audition for this. But not an ordinary person doesn't audition for a role like this.
No, it was a real departure for him at the time, and I think he
Yeah.
deliberately wanted to get away from that kind of Ferris Bueller sort of lightweight comedy stuff.
Yeah.
And I was surprised, but then when I read about the actual Shaw guy, they were the same age, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he had a very youthful. I think it's one of his best performances of his career, I've got to say.
Well, OG Fan When Star Wars was just Star Wars says that I loved him in it. And we also have Lord Toth, my favorite Mountie. Hello.
Oh, yeah.
And OG Fan When Star Wars was just Star Wars says the battle for Fort Wagner helped recruit almost 200,000 more Black soldiers into the Army after the stories were told.
We'll get to that later, but I've got the Google
There
Earth
were a
ready.
total of 200,000 that served, I believe. There was 150. Yeah. There was about 150,000 for the Army and 50,000 in the Navy.
Right.
So they mentioned during the hospital scene that they mentioned during the hospital scene that that Lincoln was going to issue the proclamation. This was the first issuing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Originally, they didn't plan to release it until September, actually, they didn't have a date that they were going to mention it. They were waiting for an opportune time when the Union Army had won a victory in the field over Lee. And that battle wasn't Antietam or Sharpsburg because Lee withdrew in good order. But for whatever reason, they chose that was apparently the right time to do it. And that had to do with the politics of the time, to free the slaves. There was something that that Lincoln had been after since the start of the war. So the fact that Robert Gould Shaw is an abolitionist, the point I'm getting at is Robert Gould Shaw is a very outspoken abolitionist. People like that, who are outspoken abolitionists, people in the government like Lincoln and his people, they love stuff like that. They handpick people like this and they put them into commands. I'll explain that in a minute.
Yeah, he was. So Shaw was only 23 when he got his commission in the army for the Civil War, and second lieutenant. And he fought in 3 battles. That would have been the third, Antietam, that we just saw. He fought the Battle of Winchester and the Battle of Cedar Mountain as well. I didn't know that, actually. And he was twice wounded prior to the events of this movie.
Well, it's hard to believe that the film was made over 30 years ago.
Oh, it looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's got that rich, proper 70 mil. I don't know if it was shot in 70 mil or 35, but it's got that old school Kodak film look that it's hard to get that on digital.
And I would imagine that this is one of those films that, Congress would want to preserve because of its historic significance, but also just because it's done so well. It's really an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah. Here's Carrie Yules, of course. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I love him as an actor.
Another thing about we just saw Frederick Douglass is apparently Frederick Douglass had 2 sons in the 54th.
Right? Yeah, I read that.
Oh, wow.
And the actor that played him in that cameo just now looks exactly like the paintings of him. So close.
They did an excellent job.
Yeah. I really like Carrie Yules' character. He's like the childhood friend who just gets drunk to get through being in the war.
Right.
Yeah, and they're all abolitionists. That's another thing about the abolitionists. I would just mention that the Lincoln administration was systematically removing officers that were either anti-abolitionist or indifferent to the abolitionist message. They wanted people who would stand out there every morning and read the statements about the abolitionist cause, and that was really a big deal to them. And if you didn't play that game, then you weren't going to get promoted. You weren't going to command. So it's not, So it's not surprising that these guys, that the fact that these guys are so young and they're getting their command probably has something to do with the fact that they're outspoken abolitionists.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thing about the Emancipation Proclamation was something that Lincoln had been wanting to do since the start of the war. He was just waiting for the right opportune moment to do it.
Now, this actor, of course, went on to be in Homicide: Life on the Street.
Yes.
And he's a very accomplished stage actor, done a lot of theatre. Andre Braugher.
Yes.
And I really rate him as an actor. This was the first time I'd seen him in anything. But he does a great job with this character because he's, for all intents and purposes, he's had a white education. Everything about him is white except for the colour of his skin. And as a result of that, of course, he clashes with Denzel Washington's character, as we'll see later. They did actually film in some real streets for the movie as well.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know how they thought about having a CO that was so young.
Yeah, because I think nearly all of the filming took place in either Massachusetts or Georgia. I'll show you on Google Earth later where the climactic scene was filmed. I've got it lined up ready already. And actually show you the exact spot where the set was built and everything.
To be fair, about the 54th, the vast majority of the blacks that fought on the 54th were northern black that had never experienced slavery. There were some runaways that did join, though.
I didn't know that. Yeah, most of them were recruited from the Boston, Massachusetts area. So,
is this scene actually in Boston, Massachusetts? The scene that we saw a few minutes ago?
That I don't know, but I would imagine all the Massachusetts scene were shot in Massachusetts. They shot in Massachusetts and Georgia, and I know they used a lot of real buildings and built sets around them rather than constructed completely new sets. So I suspect this is probably a real building that you're seeing now. There was a lot of like redressing of things. One of the things I've noticed when I watch this on repeated viewings is I just pick up on all the attention to detail in the background that some of the extras, the little things they're doing, like little jobs, or you've got cobblers working on boots, and there's so much in it, so much depth in the big shots. And this is where we get introduced to our sort of 4 or 5 main black soldiers who become friends by virtue of sharing a tent. The actor who plays the soldier who's slightly illiterate, I haven't seen him in many other things, although it might just be that I don't recognise him. I think he's Jimmy Kennedy. Jimmy spelt slightly unusually.
I don't know.
I'll just have a quick look.
What role did you say he plays?
He's the one who speaks with the stammer.
Oh, I don't know.
Yes, it is Jimmy Kennedy. I'll whack his IMDb in the chat so people can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, he's not done loads of acting. He kind of quit in the early 2000s. This would have been one of the main roles. He was in Tour of Duty for 3 episodes, if you remember that show.
Well, we also have with us tonight Linwood Kent. Hello, Linwood Kent says, hello, everyone. So glad RM does these historical event movies. History is vital to remember, but a lot of people don't even consider that historical events give birth to next generations. Absolutely. Thank you, Linwood Kent. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank Darth Plato and Lance also for being here for this, and everybody who is watching in the chat. We all support fantastic films like this as well. There's so much, Linwood Kent, that we have coming in the future. It's so good to see you tonight. And
my absolute pleasure. I was beating down your door to be on this stream because I love this movie so much.
And Thomas Bartholdi says, I've always enjoyed Matthew Broderick in this film. Thank you so much, Thomas, who's just about finished with his book that he's writing. We're all eagerly awaiting its completion.
I'm just going to see if I can find the photos of the game that I made.
Sure. We will be here, Lance.
I'll whack them over to you on WhatsApp, and you can share them with the audience if I can find them.
Okay. Well, you know something? I went on to Rotten Tomatoes and looked at the film. Of course, this is a review, I guess, from 30 years ago. I didn't even know Rotten Tomatoes was around then. But for the sake of looking at it now, it has an incredible score of a 95% fresh tomatoes, I guess would be the critics' review, and a 93% audience score with 50,000 ratings.
It got really good reviews in the UK, even though for the UK audiences it was a bit niche. But when I was working at the cinema, couples would come in and they weren't sure which film to watch, and I can't remember what the other 2 films were that we were showing, but they were nowhere near as good. And I said, go and see Glory, and they all thanked me afterwards when they came out. It wasn't the sort of film they typically would have gone to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to point out that in those days, drill sergeants had a lot more leeway in what they could do to you, unlike nowadays. So that would not have been pleasant to have that guy on you like that.
No, God no. Should also mention that this is definitely one of James Horner's finest scores for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Really is definitely on the top of his game. It's very original. It doesn't lift a lot from his other stuff. Sometimes he had a habit of doing that, but he definitely didn't do that with this.
It does. It does feel like you're there. This is the music. You can hear this playing in the background, and it really does set the tone. It's beautifully done and beautifully balanced. Just so incredible what he has made in this film. And you said you have the vinyl, but you can't find it.
I have it somewhere. I was going to. I've got all my other James Horners. I've got like 10 of them right here. Everything from Cocoon to Wrath of Khan, but Glory has disappeared. I don't know what's happened to it. Because my mum used to let me play that when we were eating dinner because she really liked the score. So I know I had the vinyl for it. I used to put it on all the time. I have a feeling these pictures are going to be in the even bigger box.
Hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if they actually made that declaration, but it's interesting if they did.
I do think that for the sake of this film, it has a fantastic impact to the regiment and also to the viewer.
Yes. So it is effective as far as putting it into the movie goes. I agree.
And trust me, you don't ever want to have to film a scene with a rain machine if you can help it. Like they would have had there. Everybody gets colds and flu and all your crew get ill.
Yeah, they didn't have penicillin in those days.
Well, it is indeed true.
Yeah, there's a certain irony in this, though, because the Confederates themselves did raise black troops in the final months of the war.
And I think actually there was the odd occasion where somebody fought alongside their master rather oddly, in even earlier than that. I think not actual, just individual soldiers would go in to battle with them.
Yes.
It wasn't loads, but definitely did happen. Well, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah, if you read Frederick Douglass, he talks about all sorts of weird things about how slaves were all over the map about how whether they supported or didn't support it, and they talked about the master in a nasty way, and others they talked about him like he was a complete saint. People were all over the place in their attitudes.
Or if you ever do an Aliens stream, I've just found all the photos from my Aliens live role-playing game that I ran.
I will certainly keep that in mind. And hello, Thomas Bertoldi, who wants to know, how is everybody doing today? Doing very well, Thomas. Hope you are well.
Yeah, he's kind of smirks a little bit.
Is this the scene where they learn to shoot? Am I right thinking? Oh, they haven't got the rifles yet, have they?
No.
No.
That's coming up though.
Yeah, Thomas's former childhood friend is not really cut out to be a soldier, and this is the discussion about that. Let him grow up some more, I think was the line, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, see what I mean? Where he just knocked the guy down. Yeah, they can't do that now, but in those days, yeah, you could. That's quite a line.
Yeah, and the illiterate guy turns out to be a crack shot because he's used to shooting and hunting squirrels.
It's an Enfield rifle and muskets. They did have rifles in those days.
Just found pictures of the Pearl Harbor game. I wish I'd had those for last week.
They really shouldn't be speaking at all.
Okay, I found it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've only got a couple, I think, but I'm going to send them to you. This is my recreation of the assault on Fort Wagner. These are very old photos, but you'll get a sense of it. I've found one of them. I think I've got about 3 pictures of it, but
Yeah, hunting is a very different sort of thing from just the anger of battle.
Well, the film didn't go on to get nominated for costume design and things like that. However,
I thought it got a couple of those.
Yeah, I thought it won 3 Oscars.
It definitely did. It did.
It
I
won
think
for Best
Morgan
Actor in a Supporting Role for Denzel Washington. And it
Best
also
art
won
direction
Best Cinematography. It was
was
nominated, but
nominated. Oh yeah, yeah.
it won Best Cinematography and it won Best Sound for the Academy Awards. Um, However, it wasn't nominated for costume. I love costume dramas, and I would consider this a historical costume drama, if you will. Uh, but Francine Jameson Tanchik, she did the costume design for this, and I think it's absolutely spectacular what she was able to accomplish here.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, he's right though. You should be able to fire at least 3 aim shots a minute. That'd be pretty unnerving.
It was right near his ear too.
Yeah. Yeah, you had to know how to you had to know what you were doing because you have to bet that the guy on the other side is gonna know.
Yes.
I seriously doubt they would have been using watermelons. It's perfectly good food.
Well, damn, I can only find the one picture. I'm still going to send it to you.
And Thomas Bertoldi lets us know everything is good, going well, writing mostly today and designing a book cover, just working on my novel, and thought I'd say hi and discuss a great movie. Well, Thomas, welcome.
I think the Carrie Yule's character is fictional. I don't think there really was the guy.
There you go, Aram. I've sent it to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lance.
It's quite hard to make out, but you can share it later when we get onto the assault on Fort Wagner. I created the whole thing out of sand, not on a gaming table. Yeah, this scene between the two of them is really good. I think they were cast really well opposite each other in this.
I agree.
And he's very much kind of yes, and the tension between them is very well done. Yeah, I think the next big American Civil War movie after this was, I believe it was Gettysburg in '93, which I also saw at the cinema in 2 parts, no less.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
I've got the CD soundtrack right here, and I really love the score by Randy Elderman for that. Great score. Yeah, Denzel Washington, not very sympathetic to this guy. I always wondered what he said to him here, because you don't quite hear it.
He said the only thing you need to do is to keep your mouth shut.
Is that really? Yeah, I remember in the cinema I could never quite hear what he said.
Well, I was looking at the subtitles. That's what it said.
Ah, I haven't got them on mine. Okay, that's no. That there you go. I think they were trying to show with that scene was that the sergeant had more respect for Denzel Washington's character.
He certainly did. He certainly did have respect for him, but he's telling him he better stay, in his corner and not interfere. And the last thing he wants is for the entire regiment to be on Denzel's side and not on his.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder why Jimmy Kennedy, and Jimmy is spelled Jihmi. I wonder why he quit acting. Because he was great in this. Of course, there weren't so many good roles for African American actors back in the late 80s, early 90s. Don't have the variety of stuff you do now. Yeah. Washington kind of tormenting him.
Yeah, it's hard enough that you have to spend your whole day miserable, then you have to go into your tent and deal with this guy.
Yeah. But I think it's great that his character exists, because it just goes to show they weren't all united as a bunch of people because of their race. They all had different backgrounds and conflicting personalities, and I kind of liked that. Yeah, and he goes out to try and get some shoes, doesn't he? Because the shoes they've got are no good.
Yeah, that scene, however, is exaggerated for the movie.
I read that
about the shoes. There's one thing. Look, the Union Army had a lot of problems, but a shortage of material was not one of them. They produced more equipment and more guns and more ammunition in 1 month in the state of Ohio alone than the entire Confederate South did throughout the entire war.
Was there no truth to the 54th kind of being last in the queue for stuff then, because it was a black unit?
I doubt that very much, because it was a very publicized event. The mustering of the 54th. I mean, the state governor was there. Frederick Douglass was there. It was a really big deal. Lincoln's a big abolitionist guy. I mean, the whole war started because of Lincoln. So this is all in the paper. The people are reading about this. People like Lincoln and the guy in Massachusetts and Frederick Douglass, they're not going to want to hear stuff about, oh, they're not getting to what they need to go into the field. They're going to make sure that people get what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And there was plenty of stuff to go around. Like I said, they had no shortage of material, unlike the South.
I'm just having a quick Google to see if I can find any more about that. Annoyingly, there's not a historical list, inaccuracies on the Wikipedia page, probably because there isn't many.
What do you guys think about these scenes here where they're walking through the camp and he's, speaking to himself and having these thoughts?
It's very Henry V, if you're familiar with the play. This scene between him and Thomas is really heartfelt, because he just wants to wish him Merry Christmas and be his old friend again just for a second. But now that they're in the army and they have ranks, he has to speak to him like an officer.
There's always room for Merry Christmas.
That's what I would say. The main problem that they had as a regiment was several of the men, the majority of them, in fact, fought for 18 months without any pay, refusing to accept the pay for equal work.
That was an issue.
That scene, I think, is coming up pretty soon. Of course, I think the Confederate South announced right after the formation of this unit that any black soldier they captured on the field would be executed.
Yeah, they were very harsh about that because they didn't want the southern population, the blacks and the southern states, to get like, any funny ideas.
Yeah, to rise up.
That's why they're doing that. They want to avoid like a Gabriel's revolt.
Yeah.
There were a couple instances in the South where something like that happened. One was called Gabriel's Revolt. Yeah, they don't want to. Yeah, so they don't want to see that happen again.
Yeah, this actor, I always like this guy who's kind of playing the dodgy supply.
Yeah, he's always playing a sleazy guy too.
Yeah, and he's usually eating in a lot of his scenes as well, and he's got a napkin, true to form here. Yeah, I can't find anything about them struggling to get their boots, so who knows if that was true or not. It might have been in one of Shaw's letters, because the majority of this script and the scenes all came out of Shaw's letters written to home, which are part of the National Archive.
Is it?
Yeah, somewhere, some archive. You can go and actually read them, I think, or copies of them. Well, there's a number of photographs of people who served in the regiment as well. Quite a few, actually.
Yeah. If photography was readily available by 1840s.
Yeah, there's a collection of 108 photographs of the regiment, which have been redigitized. For anyone who wants to see that, I will put the link in the chat. Might be of interest to some people.
Yeah,
Look at those. There you go.
I love old photos.
Yeah, they tell a story, all right. Oh, this is when they whipped Denzel, wasn't it?
Yes.
I mean, I guess the whole thing with him was that they wanted to give him a reason to actually go out and abscond, which was to get shoes and maybe get some extra food. But it's interesting that he's already been whipped so many times before. presumably when he was a slave, I guess.
Yeah, this was one of the most memorable parts of the film. And I think this might be one of the parts that led to him winning the supporting actor Oscar.
Yeah, for sure.
Goodness.
Yeah, it's intense.
Mm-hmm.
Were they even flogging people in those days?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. The British
No.
Army outlawed flogging.
No, in the army,
I'm not sure when.
in the army, it definitely still happened. Military punishments were, you know, operated under a sort of different medium of
He's
the
lucky
law.
he got off. Hey, if they really believed that he deserted, then he's lucky he got off with flogging.
Yeah. Well, they had to set an example of him, didn't they? Really.
Yeah, I love Morgan Freeman's character in this movie.
Ah, he's so good in this. It's quite an understated performance from him as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he hadn't quite gotten into Animal Kingdom voiceover mode yet. I think this was before Driving Miss Daisy as well, wasn't it?
That's pretty close to the same time.
Was it? I think
It came out. Well, it came out the same year as Field of Dreams.
Yeah, you're right. 89 came out the same year. Because that was up for a load of Oscars.
I think it won Best Picture. It did.
Yeah, I think he was nominated again, and so was Jessica Tandy, if I remember rightly. I wasn't a fan of that film, actually, I have to say. But I probably need to watch it again with older eyes. Yeah, Tandy got Best Oscar, the oldest actress to win it at that time, for 81.
This guy again.
I love this scene. Yes, you not for black soldiers. You don't. Oh, yeah, he gives him a right lecture, and the guy looks really, a little bit scared, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll sort it out for you. Don't worry."
I wonder if the shoes in those days had the left-right angle.
If the what?
The how the shoes have a left and right bend in the inside of the shoe.
Mm-hmm.
The shoes didn't always have that. Reducing pay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that did happen. But I don't know if they did it because they were black men. I don't know if that was true. You put your mark here. That was common in those days. They didn't have public education in those days, so that literacy wasn't very high. So that wouldn't have been necessarily considered an insulting thing to say to somebody. Yeah, I love this scene. It's so intense.
And once again, that beautiful sounds crack from Horner. really capturing this moment so well.
Yeah, this score is so good. I said it before, it's one of his best. This scene is a real street. This is not a set. This is a real location that they redressed. And I've actually been onto Google Earth and found it with the big town hall. It was one of the main buildings where they were all standing in the balcony. And so yeah, it's not a studio set. The number of extras in this scene as well is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. It is very impressive.
Yeah, I love that moment earlier where he kind of looks up and sees his mum, and his mum looks down, and she's so proud of him, you know.
Really just a very emotional moment as well.
Yeah.
Look at the flags.
It's beautiful.
So this is how they would transport
yeah.
troops back then, with these tramp steamers, they called them. They were all like on barges that was attached to one main boat. Not a pleasant way to travel, by the way. Sorry, Plato, I interrupted you.
Just noting how different the flags were in those days. I think there was only 36 states.
So this character of the journalist, this guy is a real person. He is the one who took Shaw's papers and later published them and made sure that his diary as well was returned to his parents. So there's another scene that comes up about that later. The lad on the left there from Carrie Yules, he plays a character called Charlie. Really small role, but he's in the film the whole way through as one of the white officers. I remember Googling him before, and there was something interesting about his career, so I'm going to have a quick look.
Yeah, this was part of the landing in South Carolina to put pressure on Charleston.
Yeah,
Charleston had symbolic significance for the Confederacy because it's considered the birth of the Confederacy. The South Carolina was the first state to secede, and it was announced at Charleston, and that created the domino effect that made other states secede. So, because of the symbolism of Charleston, that's why they're campaigning down here to try to draw the Confederates away from other areas. Maybe draw a lead down there, but he wasn't going to do that. But it wasn't a very well planned invasion.
no. Have you seen the show called The First Wives Club?
I've seen a movie called The First Wives Club.
So there is also a TV series that ran from 2019 to 2022. The reason I mention it is that the young black mute drummer boy, who you'll see he's already been in the film a couple of times, who's part of the regiment, and kind of Morgan Freeman sort of looks after him a bit. He also shared their tent earlier. That is actor, what's his name? Rico Lee. And he's still filming now. He's got quite a decent career, and he's just done 29 episodes of The First Wives Club in the last couple of years.
Impressive.
So nice to see that somebody who had such a small role and no lines, because he's just called Mute Drummer Boy, has gone on to have quite a successful career. I'll have to try and get him on my channel, I think, so I can get him for an interview. Be a good one to speak to about this. I was trying to find that other guy. There's a lot of well-known actors that have very small parts in this movie. Like Ethan Phillips from Star Trek Voyager was the guy who was working on Broderick's injury at the beginning of the film. Didn't recognize him at all.
Yeah, you guys would have had really strong accents. The southern accent they did was really pronounced.
Super Creole, I think you'd probably call that. So you won't believe this, but even Mark Margolis is in this film. That's the guy who plays Salamanca from Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm.
He is actually a Connecticut soldier, literally just an extra, effectively. So I'm going to see if I can spot him. I think he's coming up a bit later.
They actually took the time to do a ball.
Oh, when there's officers, there are always balls. Because these guys that he meets, that's the actor Bob Gunton there, I love him. He's a fantastic character actor. This unit are basically living the life of Riley, kind of keeping out of any major engagements and plundering and nicking everything they can and sending it home to make money.
Yeah, but there's a war going on. That's a
Yeah.
problem. It's not like the Duchess of Richmond ball where people didn't know there was a war going on.
No. But I think the point that they're making is these guys are acting like there isn't a war going on because they're keeping out of it. This actor on the right, I really rate him as well. He's a great character actor who's been around for forever.
Mm-hmm.
Just try and get his name.
Here's Montgomery.
Is it? Yeah, Cliff DeYoung.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. Plays Colonel James Montgomery. Yeah, I really like Cliff DeYoung. He's still around. Born in 45, 139 credits on IMDb.
And we are just about an hour into the film. It has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
Fantastic film so far.
We're nearly at the halfway mark, nearly. And I seem to recall that the unit that they meet, the other soldiers, they've all got red trousers on. And of course,
what soldiers are that?
Yeah,
it's another black unit, and you really hear the accent that Darth was talking about earlier. You know, the stringent accent of those soldiers, because they were all turning around to them saying, "Hey, you even speak like a white soldier, and you know, you march like a white soldier." Whereas you can see the guys in the red are not really marching in unison; they're very casual. And this wasn't really a battle; it was basically a raid on a town to nick stuff.
Yeah, this is very controversial. This whole campaign. I think I know. I think I understand what they were trying to do, but there's a lot of negative press about it.
Yeah, pretty accurate depiction apparently of this scrap.
Yeah, see, whether or not he's acting this cavalier about things, about letting people just leave the place, that I'm not so sure that's quite what they were doing. Like I said, it's controversial, this depiction.
Yeah.
However, that sort of thing did happen, though.
For sure.
What they would do sometimes, what some people would do, some officers, they would go in, they'd move all the furniture off the living room, and they'd carry out the carpet, and they'd just take valuables and put it onto the carpet. They called them carpetbaggers.
Oh, that's where that phrase comes from.
Yeah.
So I remember this bit where he doesn't mind his soldiers attacking a black domestic woman, but as soon as he lays his hands on the white lady, that his cards are marked.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Just executes him on the spot.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that he really acted like that. This could be just exaggerated for the movie.
That I don't know. I'll have a quick look at the history of their unit, though. Yeah, J.D. Cullum is the actor I was mentioning earlier. His character is not called Charlie. It's he's called Henry, and he's portraying a real officer. Almost no dialogue, but I always remembered him in the film. He's now a successful playwright and theatre director. It's quite always interests me to see what the people in the smaller roles went on to do with their careers.
I think if the fact that this is being exaggerated, I think is well, not the fact, but my belief that this is exaggerated is the fact that Charles going along with this at all.
They did fire the town, if I remember.
Well, that's true, but that's a different sort of thing, though. Firing the town and looting it and just looting the hell out of it are two different things. They did fire the town. Now, when Sherman marched through Georgia, they fired all the towns too. They destroyed everything in their path, and
Yeah.
there was a strategic reason why they did that. Now, that could be what they're trying to do here. That this is a microcosm of what Sherman would do the following year, to just wipe out the infrastructure as much as possible to weaken the South. That's there's a strategy there, but the whole nonsense about going in there and trying to loot the place, I don't know if that's what they were trying to do. I'm not denying that sort of thing happened. That did happen.
James Montgomery, the colonel in charge, just the real guy. The history on him is he was a controversial figure, used extreme measures against pro-slavery populations and settlements, which I guess is what we've just seen there.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to see if there's an actual more
Yeah,
solid.
but Sherman did the same thing on a massive scale.
Yeah, his brigade was notorious for its Jayhawker-style raids in Missouri at the start of the war, particularly the sacking of Osceola. I don't know, that's a different town. Yeah, raised his own black regiment.
That's Second Carolina, yeah.
Yeah, Colonel Robert Shaw condemned the action in a private letter, gave Montgomery's reasons for burning the town, as the Southerners must be made to feel this is real war, and they're swept away by the hand of God like Jews of old. That line is in the movie.
Yes, yeah. I like this scene.
Yeah,
He's kind of mouthing off with these guys.
I don't know. It sounds like I think it was pretty accurate from what I'm reading here. I mean, listen, if you can believe what's on Wikipedia, of course, but seems pretty close.
This guy's just itching for a fight.
Right, this guy who's got this little role, there's something significant about him. He's either like one of the producers or he was one of the main guys with the reenactment group that came, something like that. Let's see if I can...
It was a good casting decision.
Yeah, he definitely, that this cameo role that he got given, there was he might have been the stunt coordinator or something. I remember reading about him before. I think it's Kevin Jarre.
Well, I'm not reading what you're reading. What does it say about the looting?
Well, that it happened.
So they did loot the town?
Yeah. Yeah, this is it. I remember now. That guy who just nearly had the fight with Morgan Freeman is American screenwriter Kevin Jarre, who also wrote the screenplay for Tombstone, the Val Kilmer movie.
Mm-hmm.
He died sadly not that long ago in 2011. Still at a pretty young age. But yeah, it was on Glory, but he was predominantly a writer. He wrote Rambo: First Blood Part 2. The Devil's Own, The Mummy, The Mummy Returns. So yeah, he had a fairly decent screenwriting career,
Hmm.
and just 3 credits as an actor. So I think this is just before he went into screenwriting. I always remembered I'd read something about him, and I was, oh my god, it's the guy that wrote Tombstone, you know. So there's quite a few people that had little roles in this film that went on to, you know, far greater things, which I think's testament to good casting. That.
Or they retire.
Yeah, well, that too. And trust me, being in the industry, I can understand the desire to do that for sure. For sure. I think this is the scene, isn't it, where Morgan Freeman finally chews him out, and he's like, "You've got so much hate in you," you know, and
they do have incredible chemistry. It's undeniable.
yeah. I've had 2 friends that have worked with Denzel Washington. I'm not going to say what they said.
This scene resonates so well, I think, as another very emotional part.
Yeah.
You know, this is the part where, you know, I think that the Denzel Washington character has to make a decision as to how he's going to behave going forward.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's kind of like a turning point for him, really. It's when it's really about him becoming a soldier as opposed to just a troublemaker.
I think this is the first time anyone just gone up to him and just slapped him right across the face.
Yeah, and of course,
aside from a slaver, of course.
And also, he's starting to realize that he, you know, as a man, he is quite powerful, and his actions do influence so many people around him in a way I think he was not expecting.
This is a great scene. So you've got, you know, got the wonderful actor here. There's Clifton Young on the piano, and is it Bob Gunton that again? You see,
also Morgan Freeman rising to the occasion of a superior officer.
Yes, that is well, Darth Vader for sure.
Yeah, because he's the first black officer in the
NCO.
Yeah, NCO. Yeah, but this is great. This scene because the room is all filled with stuff they've stolen. If you look,
yeah.
Just like on the piano, there's like 20 sort of chalices, and it's all just filled.
This is Bob Gunton. He has to get the signature from, and he was in Shawshank Redemption with
he's
Morgan
the prison
Freeman,
warden.
Right?
He's the prison warden in Shawshank Redemption, and even here the character is not that dissimilar. You could imagine this character is the descendant of
You're right.
I mean, I love Bob Gunton as an actor. I think he's great. And again, I've had a couple of friends that work with him, and they said he's a very giving actor in this scene.
There's quite a few similarities. I think you're right about.
Yeah, and this is great when the whole threats. Can you? Well, I can report you to the War Department. Give us an assignment to Combat Command. You know, and so we've got the first battle coming up for the 54th in a little bit.
Yeah, but the looting of the South, no, that is something that did happen, and that they have a long memory about that.
The battle that's coming up is actually the Battle of Grimball's Landing that took place on James Island, South Carolina, I believe.
I don't know of any battle of the 54 took part in apart from Fort Wagner.
No, they had a this was it, the one before that.
I love his reaction right here.
Yeah, the first Battle of James Island, so not the second one, which I think took place a bit later. They routed the Confederate line. Can you imagine that, being a slave, finally being able to fight the people that endure slavery? I mean, God, the anger that you must have had waiting to explode on the battlefield would have been intense. Yeah, so here we go, coming up now. This is the first Battle of James Island. This was shot in Georgia, not that far from where the Fort Wagner battle scene was recreated.
Yeah,
It's so impressive.
James Island. Yeah.
I mean, a relatively small battle in the grand scheme of things, but this was where they first cut their teeth in combat.
They held their own.
Now, I don't know who the military advisor was on this film. I wonder if it was Dale Dye, because his Warriors Inc. certainly did. They did Last of the Mohicans,
Hmm.
so they do period stuff as well for sure. I'll have a quick look on IMDb.
All right, so what they're doing here is they're skirmishing the line. These are light cavalry. This is a common tactic to disrupt the line as much as possible before your own line engages.
Okay.
So that's why they're riding forward like that. They're trying to pick off as much people as possible, cause as much damage as possible before the main line of the infantry closes. It's a very old tactic, goes back to the early days of war.
Yeah, because they'd send out skirmishers as well to try and pick off officers. But I don't think you see that here. And that was more of a Napoleonic tactic.
You're talking about the 95th Rifles?
Yeah. Well, it certainly happened on Sharp a fair bit.
I love Sharp.
We'll get to that.
Yes, we will.
We can do it. We can do a Sharp thing. I could get you one of the chosen men on the stream probably. I've done an interview with him before. The guy who plays Harris. He's on my channel. And he wrote a really good book about the making of the show. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a really well filmed scene. This battle scene, incredibly well done.
Yeah, they'd fire a couple times and then they closed the distance,
Yeah.
and then it was just a melee after that. Yeah, very common. That was standard, pretty standard until the 20th century.
I remember in the cinema when those lines of rifles fired and the crack. I saw it in a surround sound, really good setup, and it was loud. It was so well done. The stunt team for this movie, by the way, was about like nearly 100 guys. Huge stunt department.
The lighting, and I know I said something about the lighting on last week's film. I think it looks amazing.
The battle consultant on the film was B.H. Barry. Yeah, that's Freddie Francis. His whole mantra with filming was he would make scenes look as natural as possible. If you watch any of his films, RM, you'll really see the similarities with his work.
Mm-hmm. Oh, look what happened to that guy.
Yeah, I remember that. Really big guy lands on top of him.
Yeah, that one scene where he was stabbing him and the guy was backing up because he was stabbed. The entire theater groaned when I saw that in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually lifted that for my Pegasus Bridge script and had a guy charge the main character and he blew his back out with his rifle that he stabbed him with. It's kind of similar. This fight was like really brutal. And there you go. This is their kind of bonding moment where he's saved his life. And now they rout them.
It looks so good. I mean, I know it's an unbelievable scene.
Yeah, it's very well done. Yeah. I still can't find the main military guy. I'm sure they must have had one.
The Rebs are running.
Oh, stunt coordinator was Bob Miner for the movie. So if you look at the really tall black actor in the 54th, he's got a mustache and he's very tall. He's one of the key extras. That is the stunt coordinator in the movie. So that's kind of nice that it's a film about Black history and they had a black stunt coordinator in a key role, because that, I mean, obviously a very important role on a movie like this. And he also worked on Escape from New York, National Treasure, Commando. 161 stunt credits, 139 acting credits. He did a great job with this film, has to be said. From Birmingham, Alabama. Still alive. Says in his biography, the film Bob Miner is most proud of in his career is Glory, 1989, in which he personally employed 70 people to perform stunts on the picture.
Well, it shows. It's remarkable.
And I imagine the majority of them would have been black stuntmen, probably doing their first job. This is kind of the sort of revelry after the battle. Is that right?
Yeah, that tune sounds like the Bonnie Blue Flag.
Oh, that's right. No, they're coming through another unit. Yeah. There's our reporter again.
Why was that the Bonnie Blue Flag? Why would they be doing the Bonnie Blue Flag? That was a Southern song. Guess I'm not thinking it right. Yeah. A little weird.
And we're an hour and 25 minutes into the film, and it went by so fast so far.
Yeah, it's I mean, this film hasn't got a boring scene in it. Everything is relevant some way to the plot. This is a nice.
Remember when we watched Pearl Harbor? We weren't even at the halfway point.
Yes.
Oh, you guys did Pearl Harbor, as in the Affleck one?
Yes.
Oh, I feel your pain.
Yeah, it's 3 hours and 3 minutes.
Oh man, that's a torturous movie. It's got some great scenes in it, but as a movie overall, it's just not a good film. In my opinion.
He's being cited for a medal here.
Really?
Yeah, because doesn't he offer him here to would you take the regiment flag? And he says, no,
Yes.
I don't want that job. That's right.
Yeah.
Which is a setup for something that comes later.
Actually, come to think of it, I think the first Black Medal of Honor was the first black man that won the Medal of Honor was William Carney. I think he was in the 54th.
Really?
I think so. Yeah.
I think this is probably another scene that helped land him that Oscar. Because Denzel's really in it in this scene. He's really there with everything he's talking about. It's very well done.
It really is.
Look how grubby they are now, as opposed to how fresh-faced and clean they were before. Now, do you see who that actor is?
Yes. Is
Yeah.
he? Yes.
That is another actor I really love. Great character actor, J.O. Sanders.
Here we go. For Wagner.
So let me show you something to share. So this scene that you're seeing now and that fort in the background, this is where it was filmed.
I don't know if I can make it bigger.
Well, just
Yeah.
there we go. So this beach at the bottom with the curve here, that shot where they're standing right now, that was done around here, and the actual fort was at the end of the strip of the beach, and they built the set on this corner. You can see that there's Camp Jekyll here. This is where all the extras were housed for this battle scene. So they used that as like the staging area to get everybody ready to do the shoot. And it was all done along here, completely put back to normal as per the agreement. And this is Jekyll Island. So yeah, that was where it was filmed. And most of the other stuff that you saw earlier was filmed not far away from here, relatively close by on the mainland. So it took me ages to find that because there was conflicting reports over where it was filmed, but this is definitely correct, and this is where it was shot.
You know, General Strong doesn't survive that day.
Did he not?
No. In fact, there were 3 battalions that charged into Fort Wagner. All the colonels were killed, all 3 of them.
Yes.
And General Strong didn't survive either.
To White and the 54th, wasn't it?
Yeah, the 54th did lead the attack. That's true.
And one of the White regiments accidentally fired on them when they got into the fort.
I don't know about that.
Oh, it's true. Killed a whole load of them, but it's totally by accident. It was because it was dark and they couldn't tell who was who, and they didn't realise that they'd penetrated the fort. And as they got over the top, they shot a load of them by accident.
No,
this is a great scene.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite scenes in any movie.
Because it's very, this is how the slaves, of course, got through the day of doing the horrible work that they had to do by singing. And I like the way this is all brought into this scene, and it's the way of them preparing for the battle tomorrow, which they know is going to be really difficult. And the fort had already been attacked, by the way. It already had one massive assault on it. So this is the second battle of Fort Wagner that you're going to see. And the first assault had already failed.
Yeah, we'll get to that. That guy has a good rhythm. Mm-hmm.
I've actually got a pretty nice map of the fort here as well, if you want to see that quickly. It shows you where the 54th actually charged, and it was, I mean, what a nightmare to assault that. I don't know why they didn't attack it at night in the first place.
What was this, Lance?
That's the map of the actual fort that they're going to assault the following day. And it's a period, and so this big wave that you've got coming around here, that's actually the route the 54th took to charge and got up onto this part of the battlements. So you can see what a nightmare it was to assault it, because it was on such a narrow strip of land. That was the only way to approach it, was through that gap. The rest of it was all marsh and creeks, and of course the water was on either side. So there you go. Yeah, wouldn't like to have been leading that charge, I'll tell you now. What's nice about this scene, as well as it finally shows them all coming together, all conflicts put aside. And each man kind of bears their fears there. So when Denzel does it, he nearly cries, I think, his character, if I remember rightly.
Amen.
Yeah, and Denzel's character speaks last and has a tear nearly.
Very ancient turn of phrase. Means,
What minute are you guys on the film? Because I accidentally.
Well, the timer is there. Can you see the timer?
Yeah, 1:34. So I think I'm slightly ahead of you because I skipped it and had to go back. Some 90. Okay, I'm slightly ahead still. I'll pause it for a sec. Oh, that's right. There we go. That's better. That's close enough. I think this is the first time that you kind of see the other side to Denzel Washington's character, where he kind of shows his vulnerability.
Yeah.
I really like that. Acts his socks off in this scene, it has to be said as well.
Well, up until now, he's just been the bully.
Yeah. And I mean, he still made that character interesting. The character could have been very one-dimensional up to this point, but he wasn't, which I thought was good. Yeah, so General Strong survived the assault on Fort Wagner, but he died of tetanus, I think, back in New York, not long after. Yeah.
Okay, so okay.
But I think you're right that all the other officers under them, I think nearly all of them were killed. Yeah, died of tetanus in New York City. He must have gone back there pretty quick because the assault took place on the 16th of July. He died 2 weeks later on the 30th of July. Right, that guy who's doing up Matthew Broderick's Cumberband in the tent, that is the stunt coordinator I mentioned earlier. So that's the stunt coordinator for the film.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they obviously gave him, a nice little screenshot. He's got a significant role in the battle. Actually, you'll see one shot of him standing on the battlements, waving the flag. Everything from here is just perfect. So moving. I might have to mute it, so I'm going to put the music on.
Yeah, it's stunning.
Yeah.
Just definitely one of James Horner's best tracks ever. The whole lead up to the start of this battle.
A little nod coming up.
This is where you finally see them get the respect of the other white soldiers in the Union Army.
Yeah, here it comes in.
Yeah.
I'm hearing somebody's.
Sorry, that's mine.
Getting some 50. Finally, a little respect. They put this. You see how they put
I've turned it right down so you don't get ratioed.
You're putting the hat on top of a sword. That was something they did. Yeah.
So there is the beach that we saw earlier. And incidentally, if this had been in the real place, the sea would have been on the other side. So,
I heard that. I heard that before, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, they attacked in the wrong direction.
Yeah. So, I mean, it obviously works for this location, and I don't think it matters in terms of the context of the film.
Yeah, I remember reading that. The sea should be on the right.
That's correct. Yeah. So this is the scene where he gives his papers and his diary to that journalist, the reporter, who, like I said before, was a real guy, and it was him who made sure that they got back to
Yeah.
Shaw's family. And
Yeah, they're presaging the end.
now that's the actor I mentioned earlier with the big hat on. That's the guy who's now a theatre director in Los Angeles. And here's our mute drummer boy, who's of course is doing quite well with his acting career.
Yeah, that was a long custom.
Oh man, I get goose pimples every time I watch this scene. The bit where he sends his horse away as well.
Yeah, almost fatalistic.
It's a lovely shot. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, everything about this music, and I think they probably shot this in the late afternoon. Looking at the light. The whole thing with his face here is he knows he's going to die.
Yeah.
That's how he's playing it. He's just like,
Well,
probably
the
not
whole-
going to survive this.
Well, the whole battle lasted 4 hours, and it was over by 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
But 6 p.m. That's that's pretty late in the day to start a battle.
I still don't understand why they didn't assault it at night in the first place.
I don't know the history behind that.
I think generally night attacks were not a thing that were done in with actual regiments and stuff. Just wasn't the way war was conducted back then, unless you were in the far west.
Yeah, but that would have been considered very late in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, Waterloo started at 11:30 in the morning, and that was considered late in the day.
Mm. Oh man, the music in this is just so amazing.
It is.
I used to put this on and picture just, it would send your imagination wild when you were listening to this with your headphones on. But one of the things I didn't imagine was me running around in a uniform of the Union Army.
But they couldn't be officers there. They could be NCOs, but not officers.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know who the first black officer was in the American Army. That must have come later, I assume.
Yeah, I don't know. And it was the same way in the British Raj. The locals couldn't be officers until the 20th century, I think.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, our history in regard to that is not a particularly proud part of our...
At the start of the First World War, I think the highest ranking was a major, but we're getting out of our lane here.
Yeah. So that's a rabbit hole to go down. And I probably got I'm guessing around 200-300 extras here to represent the 54th, because there's no CGI extras put in the background with digital or anything like that. It's all real people. There's a great shot coming up where you get a sense of how many of them there are.
Yeah. I believe there were 300 total casualties.
Yeah, as they lost over
It was between 300 and 400.
That's the shot I meant, where you see them from the fort's POV. There's like four, 5 lines of them. It did an incredible job with this fort set when you consider it was just basically built in sand dunes.
And the reason why they're attacking Fort Wagner is because it guards the approach into Charleston Harbor. That's why they're attacking for it, so that they can bring the Navy ships in safely.
Yeah, because I think they wanted to capture Fort Sumter eventually, and to take out Sumter, they had to take out all the other forts that surrounded it first, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, Fort Sumter was down there, yeah.
There was like a chain of about 6 of them, and this was the first one they tried to take out because it was in one of the most prominent positions or something.
Yeah.
Roderick lost his hat.
I think of fortifications. Sounds like 18th century warfare. Yeesh.
I actually played an American Civil War game, tabletop game, a few months ago, and I was the Union, and I got my arse absolutely kicked. Totally lost. I did worse than they did historically. There's a few interesting warfare things that you see in this battle that you don't see in the rest of the movie, like the Confederacy guys in the fort have got almost like these miniature explosive grenades that they've made, that they chuck down the ramparts, and they did actually have those. I don't know what they were called. Early version of a grenade, effectively.
So they're still out there. The sun has set, I guess, more or less. It's several hours later.
This is still in real time from when they charged. They've just all, the chargers kind of stalled. They've all laid down, and I think he gives the order to continue the attack under cover of darkness.
That wasn't unusual to just hit the ground and wait for darkness. Yeah. They did that at Fredericksburg. They had to hit the deck, and because the fire was too intense, and they ended up staying there for a full 24 hours. But that was Fredericksburg. This wasn't Fredericksburg. This lasted about I think the battle lasted 4 hours.
The funny thing is, as well, is was Gettysburg 64 or 63? I forget.
63.
Yeah, I think this was a couple of weeks after Gettysburg.
Yes, they said that in the movie. Gettysburg had fallen.
Yeah. So you just had a massive Union victory. Yeah, and here comes the big charge now. It's brutal. So many of them getting killed. So that photograph that I sent you, was my miniature recreation of this for a games show. And I actually had all the big display boards, the cinema stands for Glory. I'd kept them from the cinema I was working at, so I had all those surrounding the game, which was quite nice. So, Aram, is this your first time watching this film?
No.
Okay.
Jeez. They can just fire on top of you.
Yeah, it's Proper shit position to attack. These are the little grenade things they start chucking down. I think they're like dynamite sticks or something pretty close to that.
I think what they did there was because the Navy had withdrawn, they were able to move their siege cannons, their defensive siege cannons, around and use them on the infantry attacking.
Yeah, you would have thought that the Navy would have kind of laid on a supporting barrage from the sea while all this was. I don't know. It's probably difficult to coordinate.
They had been doing that, and the barrage had stopped. They pulled back. Yeah, here he goes.
So I don't know where you guys are, but Shaw has just fallen on my screen.
Mm-hmm.
I think his death is pretty accurately depicted because he did die on the ramparts.
Yeah. I think he died earlier in the battle, though.
Oh, really? Yeah, that may well be true. I'm not.
I mean, for the purpose of the film, you know, I think it does add to
yes.
to this dramatically.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, then Denzel goes down, and of course, everybody now is like storms up. When I was watching the movie, because I didn't know the history of this battle, I thought at this point, oh, they're going to take the fort now. You know, they're all going to steam up. They're going to take the fort, and it kind of sets that up for you that's what's going to happen. But
and this beautiful, I don't know what song it is, but it is quite, you know, emotional and
very well done. Good use of the kind of the vocal, almost operatic style.
You're not wrong.
And there goes the young lad.
Yeah.
Carrie Yule still up there leading the way. Kind of found his courage now.
Yes, he did. That's the exact same tactic that the Irish sergeant had used down earlier in the movie.
And
he learned that.
The black soldier that you just saw standing on the ramparts waving the flag, who was basically encouraging the other units to attack, that was the stunt coordinator again.
Does this rank as one of the best, let's say, war, let's say, action scenes in a war? I don't know how you would describe this.
Certainly one of mine.
In film, let's say in our lifetime, in the last 50 years, is it?
I think it's one of the best action scenes ever in any American Civil War movie, for sure. This is the best American Civil War movie in my mind.
Darth Plato?
I'm not a Civil War guy. I'll take your word for it. It's definitely one of my favorite battle scenes of any movie.
I have to say, I'm sorry, go ahead, Lance.
No, I do really like the movie Gettysburg as well, but the depiction of the violence and stuff in that, because they wanted a PG rating, is very kind of neutered. Whereas Glory, you know, all the battles are very realistic.
And that was how the battle ended.
Yeah. Man, the ending of this is it's quite sad.
I have to say that the approach to this setup, and I know it was not entirely accurate. I know that, and I know that there were certain parts where people didn't fall at certain, you know, at certain stages. But the timing of this, you know, regardless of the outcome, the timing of it, looking at this film, it was absolutely perfect. I mean, it's really just remarkable being able to piece everything together in this way. It's very, very impactful. And it looks incredible, you know, together as a film. That climax at the end right there was amazing. And then the silence. I know this is the Boys Choir of Harlem because I looked it up. doing the ooh, that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah, and it's just so, it resonates so beautifully seeing, them, of course, let's say the next morning, if you will, may not have been the next morning, but with them, having perished and there on the sand. um it's just very, very compelling and doesn't feel cliche. Nothing about this feels cliche at all.
no.
You see what they're doing here? Normally, they returned bodies to each
I was
other,
just about to mention this.
but
Yeah,
they didn't. They didn't do that here because they meant it as an insult to bury him with black soldiers.
yeah. And his mother said she couldn't think of a finer place for him to be buried than with the men that he led on the attack. But they did actually, before that happened, they did ask for his body back, and the response from the soldiers defending the fort in a note, and it's written somewhere, was, "We've already buried him with his N-word." I don't want to say the word. So they were trying to be really goading, and the fort was never captured as
Yep.
well.
It's a bit misleading. Yeah, what they say here is misleading.
At the end?
Yeah.
Which bit?
The last part where it said the fort was never taken. That's not entirely true.
Well, it was.
Not
Did it
long.
surrender at some point at the end of near the end of the war? I think it surrendered or something.
Not
It was
long
never
after
taken
that.
by assault.
I'll tell you. Not long after that engagement, the defender decided to move the location to a different defensive position. So
That's right. Yeah, I remember reading
Fort Wagner was basically abandoned right after this.
Yeah.
So basically, that they didn't mention that in the postscript because it just makes it more depressing. It's like, wait, they went through all that for nothing?
Yeah, as is
That's
often
the problem.
case.
That's the problem. That's the biggest tragedy of that scene, is they did it for nothing.
So this is the real sort of, it's kind of like a statue, almost like a painting of Shaw with the unit, and I forget where it is.
It's actually a memorial in Massachusetts. If you
That's
go to
it.
Massachusetts,
Yeah.
Lance, and you go through the Freedom, there's like a Freedom Trail. There's a Freedom Trail and there's a Black Freedom Trail. And this is, I believe, is on the Black Freedom Trail. And you'll see it. And what they did was, for the sculpture, they actually took the likeness of some of the soldiers. I don't know of the ones who perished, but some of the soldiers at the time, during that time period, and used the likeness of some of the soldiers to sculpt for this particular memorial.
So was the memorial actually made at the time?
No, it was made 30 years later.
Right, okay.
I didn't even know that.
So in the early sort of 1900s. Well, they would have had the photographs of some of the soldiers, and of course some of them would still have been alive then, wouldn't they?
Exactly. It's quite impressive to see, and you can't miss it.
Yeah.
It is quite a poignant memorial.
Yeah, I did always want to go, and somebody mentioned the Gettysburg battlefields, which is definitely worth a visit. I visited it by walking around it on Google Earth, but during all my visits to America, I was never going anywhere near it. It was like such a way out place to go and visit. Yeah, based on the letters of Robert Goldshaw. There you go. So.
Well, something.
Yeah, the reason why they abandoned the fort is because they were too exposed to the Navy.
Ah, there you go.
So if they had waited, if they delayed the attack, then things would have played out differently.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Now, Charleston did eventually fall, but it wasn't until the Sherman campaign. So Sherman invaded Georgia, basically just burned Georgia to the bone, sacked Havana. Atlanta fell, I think, in September 2nd, I think, somewhere in there. And that made the difference in the election of Lincoln. So Lincoln was able to get reelected because of that. The fall of Atlanta, then they pivoted north to South Carolina, and Charleston fell in early 65.
So I didn't know this. Driving Miss Daisy and Glory opened in the same week in America, December 14th, 1989. I can't remember when we got it in the UK, but probably was not that long after. And of course, that would have been to get both the films in for the Oscar season. And Driving Miss Daisy soundly beat its competition during the weekend opening in first place. But the film took nearly $27 million at the box office in the States.
Well, I have to ask the questions, Darth Plato, that you ask normally, that we ask when we watch a historical film like this, or, let's say a historical drama, depending upon the factual parts of it. Does the overall artifice, effects, designs get in the way of telling the story? And I would say no. I think that it was incredibly effective in this story, and it had to have certain elements of abrasiveness to it because of the individuals involved and the issues involved. I think that it was really absolutely perfect. As I mentioned, the costume designer, I can't remember the woman's name now, but she also did The Color Purple. She's accustomed to doing a lot of costume dramas. This must have been an incredible undertaking for her. With so many extras, with so many props, just so much to do. She also had to do ladies' clothing as well. And those dresses at that time period were quite complicated and elaborate. Darth Plato, what do you think? Does the overall artifice, effects, and designs get in the way of telling the story in glory?
In some movies they do, and this one it does not. It's a better exemplar than Midway.
Yeah, my response to the same question is that actually, if anything, I would say complements the film. And you mentioned the costume designer. She's actually, it was Francine Jamison Tanchuk, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, it's her.
She was a black costume designer, quite rare in Hollywood in those days. Like you said, she'd done The Color Purple. She's got 43 credits. She's still working, and she's just done Emancipation, which is Anton Farquhar's next movie with Will Smith and Ben Foster. A runaway slave forges through the swamps of Louisiana on a tortuous journey to escape the plantation owners that nearly killed him. So in the same milieu, you might say.
Yes, exactly. I think they were very lucky to get her for this film because I don't see anything, wrong with that. It looks quite authentic. And as I said, it's an abrasive film that deals with an incredibly thorny topic that I think was done perfectly. And you had mentioned, Lance, how much you enjoyed the score, and I know, Darth Plato, you enjoyed it as well. There were some moments in it that were absolutely climactic and really uplifting for a situation that is, it's a war film, so there are going to be these sort of sad moments that kind of balanced out well the tone, I think, of the film in some parts. I also think that the acting, the performances in this were spectacular, and the chemistry of everyone in this film was so impressive. So I was really touched by a lot of it, and I have seen the film before, but it's been a while, and I'm looking at it from just purely an example of film and what is this film trying to accomplish and trying to achieve. So while it may not be completely historically accurate, I still am very fascinated by someone's vision to recreate this on film. So this must have been such an incredible undertaking. Darth Plato, the second question that you have for us is, does the dramatization of the film mean that the audience gains an understanding of the event or lose understanding? What do you think?
I think the movie was made for the express purpose of the audience gaining the understanding instead of just trying to make a spectacle. Some movies want spectacle. This is not one of those movies, but they don't shirk on the spectacle. It's still a very impressive war movie.
Lance?
I completely agree. I mean, for me, the whole reason I wanted to see the film was, Black Regiment in the American Civil War. I don't remember this, or this sounds very interesting. I want to know more about this. And I wrote the screenplay about the first black paratrooper in the British Army who dropped into D-Day. And it was only a few years ago that I found out we even had any black paratroopers in the British Army in World War II. I didn't know we had any, and we actually had quite a few. I mean, there wasn't loads, but there was 6 or 7 of them. So I'm always interested in those kind of cultural nuggets of stories of heroism, and that they've always really interested me, and that's something I've kind of always done with my work as well, to be honest. So yeah, I loved it, and just seeing it again, I think the film is as good as it was on its release.
I also think that for so many people who might be watching this would be perhaps even their only experience in understanding what maybe have occurred at the time. And, I don't want to go ahead and take for granted anybody's education. Everybody gets educated at a different school. And that's the one thing that I can honestly say is not the same as what you may learn in school, regardless of where you were educated, which country. It doesn't matter. It's not going to be the same. But this film, I think, does a fantastic job of trying to convey a moment in time. And it does feel like they captured that moment in time. I think that's very important. The part where Denzel talks about how things aren't going to change, and it was kind of like he had to make the decision: is it going to be a hopeless situation, or is he going to have some meaning? And clearly, this was a turning point for we talked about turning points earlier, but historically, I think it was certainly just having the opportunity to serve for these men, which was so incredibly significant for them. And, I think the attitude towards wanting to serve in the military, the desire to become a soldier, at that time was a very different approach, a very different thing for a young man, I would imagine. I don't know how young men think about joining the military these days, but back then, it seems like it was something that many men desired to do and sought out. So, I think for something that was so important, the ability to go ahead and do that did count for something for them. So I think that they did convey that as well. And the final question is, given 1 and 2, is the audience better off seeing it? Lance, what do you think?
2000% yes. In fact, I think it should be on. This should be a film that should be on like school curriculums for history, because I don't think that. There's historical liberties with any movie, but actually to get this story into a 2-hour, 10-minute feature film is nothing short of amazing. It's a testament to the scriptwriters that they were able to condense the narrative, and still you get a sense that you followed them from beginning to end. So yeah, no, absolutely. One of my favorite historical films of all time, definitely in my top 10 in that genre.
Jeff Plato?
It's one of the most. I saw this movie when I was a kid, and at the time I thought it was the most somberest movie I'd ever seen. Not just because of the ending. The ending it does take something out of you. That's true, but just the overall thing, because you learned about in school, like slavery used to be a thing, and there was the Civil War, the North and the South, and General Lee, and Abraham Lincoln. You hear about all that in school, but you see what the black folk in those actually had to deal with, and what these men did in volunteering. Now, most of these guys were from the North. They themselves had not experienced slavery, but they joined it. I can't gainsay them, but they joined it and they served, and it's different from any other war movie, because a lot like Pearl Harbor happened, and there was an outrage, and you want to go join the soldiers because you want to do your part. These guys wanted to do their part. That's true, but there's another layer to it. That's part of the historical narrative of America and the changing of America that you don't see in a lot of war movies. That's very unique to America at that time, and I think that's something that needs to be emphasized very much so today, in this culture of wanting to change the past and editing books and stuff like that. This is the movie that people should know about.
Yeah, agree. Can't stand it when we keep hearing of these things being changed, and but it's an amazing film. And by the way, the guy who was the unit production manager who must have worked very hard because he got an associate producer's credit. Interesting thing, he went on to produce The Insider, that great film with Al Pacino and Russell Crowe. He did the Miami Vice movie. He also did Defiance, which I'm sure Darth Plato's probably seen, with Daniel Craig about the partisans in the forests in Russia, World War II.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Good little movie that. So he's gone on to have a pretty. He executive producer on Heat, 1995. So he went from quite a small producing role on Glory. He's done eight outstanding films. So it's,
What you mentioned there, like one more thing. You mentioned the movie Defiance. Okay,
Yeah.
So it's a war movie.
Yes.
I cannot remember that movie. I remember seeing it, but I don't remember the details of it.
I
This movie, Glory, I will never forget this movie.
Mhm.
yeah, Defiance is a good film, but not a great film.
Do they hide underground in Defiance?
No, that's the one called Echoes. I think that's Echoes of the Darkness, where they're hiding in sewers.
You're kind of breaking up.
Hello, Lance?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you at the end there.
Oh, and let me just move my mic. No, I think that the film you're talking about is set in the sewers of Warsaw, where all the families hide in the tunnels and stuff. Defiance is about Russian partisans fighting back against the Germans in the Pripyat marshes, which was a huge area of forests and swamps, and that was where the first sort of real guerrilla activity, and it's again based on a true story about three brothers that kind of led the attack. And it's also written by Edward Zwick, who wrote and of course directed Glory, and it's also directed by Edward Zwick. I forgot, but Plato's right, it's not as memorable as, it's a good film, but it's not a great film.
Okay, well,
I'd give Glory 9 out of 10 on IMDb, and I'd give Defiance like 7.
well, I agree with you, Darth Plato. This movie is unforgettable,
Yeah.
and it is the combination of an incredibly compelling historical story, such a beautiful, the cinematography in this is outstanding, and also the music is also amazing. The performances, I think that there was nothing wrong with this film. So it has stood the test of time. It's 30 years old, but it looks like it was made yesterday. And I'm sure walking onto that set must have felt like you were walking into another time. Certainly one of Matthew Broderick's best performances, something I'm sure he's incredibly proud of. And, the cast, the supporting cast also were incredibly impressive. It really was outstanding performances. The casting alone, I have to give the casting agents credit for that as well. So, yes.
Super cast. I think I've got to say that I think Broderick should have been nominated for an Oscar for that film. I think he wasn't because of the history of roles that he had. I just don't think they were going to go there with him. But I think he surprised everybody, because when I heard about him playing that part, I thought, I don't know. And he could have been the thing that let the movie down, but he didn't. He did the role just perfectly, and very, very different from any role he's played before or since. So I'd say it's the performance of his career, actually.
Absolutely. Yes. And thank you. I just want to thank both of you, Darth Plato.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. Theoretically, let's say that Glory wasn't made until this year.
Oh, interesting.
So if Glory was gonna be made now,
Yeah.
who would be playing the roles?
Oh my God, that's you'd probably have somebody like
Timothy Chalamet might play the role of that Matthew Broderick played.
Yeah, I could see that. He's probably a little bit too effeminate, but I could see that happening.
And then perhaps the role that Denzel Washington played, I would give it to the gentleman who, what is his name? He was in the movie we watched with the Devotion, Jonathan Majors.
Jonathan Majors.
Yeah, he's good.
And for the role for I can't remember the guy. I just saw his name. The first non-commissioned officer. That'll be
Morgan
tough.
Freeman's character.
Yeah, I guess I would give that role to. I don't know. I can't. I can't think of anyone just now. What about you all? Who would you choose for some of the roles?
Hmm. Um,
I don't know actors' names.
Well,
well, I can think of a few people that would be. I mean, you know what? When he
Oh.
was younger, DiCaprio would have been brilliant for sure,
Forrest
and
Whitaker.
he also would have been good in Carrie Yules's role as well. Johnny Depp would have been good in Carrie Yules's role if he could have reined it in a bit. But yeah, done with the black actors.
Darth Plato. Who were you going to say? You.
Forrest Whitaker.
Oh yes, yeah.
For the Denzel Washington role, or which?
No, the sergeant.
Oh, yeah. Where in his kind of more youthful tone prime.
Yeah, I don't know how old he is now, but
He's a bit
I
chunky
could see
now.
it. I could see that. I could see him doing that role.
I could see Idris Elba playing that role, actually.
Yeah, Idris would be
Idris
very good.
and the illiterate guy Daniel Kaluuya would be great as him. He'd be fantastic in that
He would
character.
be good in that. I think he just did the voice for Spider-Punk in Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse or something like that. I think it was him. Fletcher Williams says, Fletcher Williams, Eyes Like a Games channel says, Glory was awesome. Great stream while driving, listening while driving. So glad that you were able to listen in, Fletcher Williams. And Linwood Kent says, women are most definitely the fairest sex.
I will not disagree with that statement.
Any final thoughts on the film Darth Plato?
I think I just offered it. Just that this is a hard movie to top. I mean, there's some good movies out there. I'm really glad we got a chance to review
And
it.
it's interesting because I thought the question you were going to ask me, if it was made now, would they be able to tell the story, because there has been so much pressure on screenplay writers to show a modern perspective of things.
I don't think it would be
So-
the same script if it was made now. It would be criticized for white man savior, sort of, that is a phrase that's used, and I forget, but telling a black story from a white man's savior perspective, and I don't think there would have been anything wrong of flipping it and literally starting the story from the point of view of a young black character who then joined the regiment, and you see the white officers through his eyes. That take could also be really interesting. I wouldn't have a problem with that, but I think this was a historical epic that very much lent towards the facts that were available, and the facts that were available were predominantly all from Robert Shaw's letters, so it made sense that they took that route.
Absolutely.
Well, at the one hand, I don't want to gainsay what people would do, but at the same time, I'm going to say I don't have a lot of faith in modern movie making.
You're right. I'm right there with you, man, on that one.
I would be very concerned that it would be wrapped up in modern politics when there was enough politics going on at that time already. You don't need to add or subtract anything. I think that the fighting scenes captured the brutality of what was going on, and the actors' performances certainly practiced the emotional toll that this entire thing took. And the screenplay did a good job of trying to get, let's say, the viewer to understand what was at stake and what was going on. But we know that it's difficult to kind of capture the fact of the social politics going on at that time. And I think for what it is in this controlled environment, in the military, a somewhat more controlled environment than in a normal social setting, it did a good job of doing that. And I think that the soldiers themselves win you over. If you go into this film wondering what it's about and you don't understand what's going on, you do realize that these soldiers have incredible pride in what they're doing, regardless of the outcome at the end of the story. So that's something else too that I think comes across incredibly well. and is something to kind of take pride in as an American, even, I would say. So, that was very, it's just such a wonderful film to watch. I just want to thank both of you, Lance, for joining us. Lance, where can people find you, Lance?
Well, I'm on the Outcast Creative channel. I must mention we've got first assistant director David McGiffert on my channel, 9 o'clock UK time, which I think is 1 o'clock LA time. He is the first assistant director of Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3. And he was the first AD on Who Framed Roger Rabbit and about 40 other films that you all would have heard of. And it's really interesting to get him on as a guest, because the first AD's job on a set is always to keep an eye on the time. And so he's got loads of. I chatted with him earlier today. We were interviewing him last Sunday, but he had a family thing he had to change. So this Sunday, 9 o'clock, we've actually managed to get StreamYard to work with him as well. I've got him coming on for an interview. That's industry interview number 32 for me, I think, and it's going to be a really good one. So yeah, do tune into that, guys.
And guys, please like and subscribe to the Outcast Creative. I have the link right here in the chat as well as on the screen. Lance always has something interesting and amazing on his channel. So please do like and subscribe so you can keep updated as to what's going on. And Darth Plato, where can people find you?
You can find me right here on the Positive Fandom, The It Show.
Yes, of course. And of course, you can also find Darth Plato on the Burnett Network as well. So if you need to get in contact with him, please do reach out either to me or to the Burnett Network. If you wish, guys, you can always find me here on Positive Fandom.
I'm around.
And you can also find me on the Burnett Network, guys. I am the creative content director there, as well as finding me on Lorena Creole's channel and on the 1/6 Scale Man Network or on El Profesoro's channel. So guys, thank you so much for joining Darth Plato, Lance, and myself for this incredible live watch party of glory, one of the best Civil War films ever made, and certainly still has so much of the gravitas it did 30 years ago. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please do like and subscribe to everyone here. And guys, remember, no matter where you are in the galaxy, always remember to please be kind, everybody. Take care.